Hey folks, this is Kalani. We have some major changes to the way Mythic Plus dungeons are going to work, specifically relating to earning their achievements. It could take up to twice as long to earn the Keystone Master achievement in patch 9.1, which obviously doesn't sound that great on the face of things, but when you look at some of the details, it might not be as bad as it first seems. We also have our first glimpse of what the new seasonal affix could look like. Patch 9.1 will introduce even more story skips to help get your alts caught up, and then we have some news about Blizzcon 2021 as well. Let's jump right in. One of the more impactful pieces of news this week is all about Mythic Plus Keystones, specifically the new in-game score system and how that's going to change the Keystone Master achievement. If you work towards getting all of your plus 15 keys done in time for Keystone Master in Season 1, you should have a good idea of what's involved. It didn't really matter what affixes were on your Keystone, as long as you managed to complete that dungeon on a plus 15 key within the time limit, it counted towards your Keystone Master achievement and you would eventually earn your title and your mount. In Season 2, all of the Keystone achievements will be based on your Mythic Plus score. For the new Keystone Master achievement, the one which rewards the mount, instead of completing the dungeons on plus 15 in time, you just need to get a Mythic Plus score of 2000 or higher. That's a new requirement. Alright, cool, sounds easy enough. 2000 score. That doesn't really mean anything unless we know how much a dungeon will reward you with. We don't have concrete numbers here yet, only what players have managed to piece together from the current PTR build, but it looks like you will earn about 12.5 points per keystone level of the dungeon you complete, then with some extra points based on your time. That means just and so timing a plus 15 key will earn you about 187 points. With there being 8 dungeons total in Shadowlands right now, timing all of the dungeons on a plus 15 will earn you about 1,500 Mythic Plus score. We're a bit shy of that 2,000 goal right now, but that's where Fortified and Tyrannical come into play. You can earn extra score for each dungeon by completing them on Fortified and on Tyrannical. It looks like you earn full score for whichever run you complete with the higher keystone, and then 33% of the normal score for the affix with the lower keystone. For example, completing a plus 15 key on Fortified usually earns you about 187 points, so if you complete that same dungeon, again on a plus 15 key, but this time on Tyrannical, you will earn an extra 62 points for a total of 249 points for that dungeon. And that's if you just and so make the timer, so we will for sure be earning more than 250 points per dungeon if you complete it on a plus 15 key on Fortified, and then as well on Tyrannical. It should come as no surprise that doing this for every dungeon will earn you 250 times 8 points, which comes out to be exactly 2000. That's a right shocker there, isn't it? So this is why you may have heard that you need to do every dungeon on Fortified and on Tyrannical on a plus 15 key to get Keystone Master in Season 2 of Shadowlands. But that's not necessarily true. Yes, completing every dungeon on both affixes at plus 15 will earn you enough score to meet the 2000 score requirement, but it's actually way more flexible than that. With the new system being score-based, you have so many choices of how to progress your score. Completing a run on a higher level keystone will increase your score. Completing the same level of keystone but with a faster time will increase your score as well. Completing the dungeon on both Fortified and Tyrannical will increase your score as we've seen. This means you can actually earn Keystone Master without doing any Tyrannical keys at all. It's probably way harder to do it that way, but it is possible. It's also possible to get Keystone Master with plus 10 keys for some of your dungeons. You just need to make up the score somewhere else. If you know one dungeon and like running it way more than the others, you can do a higher key in that dungeon and then just a lower key in another one. I personally think moving towards a score-based system is much better, and the flexibility it offers is fantastic. You get to choose how to progress further and further and how you want to increase your score. But that doesn't mean this implementation is perfect. Looking at Keystone Master specifically, it's going to take a bit more work when compared to the old system, especially if you were only doing Mythic Plus dungeons to get that achievement and get the mount. If that was your only goal and the only reason for playing Mythic Plus dungeons, it is going to feel pretty bad when you're told you have to do about twice as much work as before for pretty much the same reward. I totally get that, and I think within the current system, the Keystone Master mount should arguably be earned at a lower score threshold. The great thing about the system being score-based means that they can change the required score for achievements or rewards fairly easily, and then they can let us decide how we want to get that required score. They could also add in more rewards for higher scores for the players who love to push Mythic Plus dungeons, and even add in some smaller rewards for reaching milestones along the way. But I also think there is a large fundamental issue with the Fortified and Tyrannical affixes. Having each affix earn you score individually makes sense when you look at what Blizzard wants to achieve. They want players to be running Mythic Plus dungeons every week, regardless of which affixes are present, specifically Fortified and Tyrannical. The way that Mythic Plus score works gives us that incentive. We can earn more score if we play during both affixes compared to just running keys during Fortified weeks. But I don't think either affix is particularly interesting, and they don't really add that much to a dungeon run overall. I would actually be happier if the dev team removed Tyrannical and Fortified and just relied on the Mythic Plus levels to scale up monsters in general, then work on some more interesting rotating affixes. I think that would yield a more interesting Mythic Plus experience, and it would definitely be a lot easier to balance, but as long as Tyrannical and Fortified are in the game, the dev team will try and push us into playing both. I think earning extra score is a good way to incentivize players to dip their toes into both affixes, but the score requirements for certain rewards are still probably too high. And then I feel like the last problem with this whole issue is actually a lack of decent rewards in general. The Keystone Master achievement is a recolored mount. It's not the most exciting or enticing thing in the world. That probably makes players feel even less motivated to put in the work, in this case the extra work, because the reward isn't worth it in their eyes. Then we also have the item level upgrade bump in the Valor system. I imagine this is what a lot of players will want to work towards the most, because it's the only way to get decently competitive gear out of running Mythic Plus dungeons, but this will depend on why you want to complete this achievement. If you only run Mythic Plus dungeons to get Keystone Master, and then that's it, that's all you want to do, these changes will seem like a massive hindrance, sapping away your game time and forcing you to run keys you don't want to do. But if you actually enjoy the Mythic Plus system and you love running dungeons and pushing as high as you can go, I don't think you'll really notice a difference. So how these changes will affect you also depends on why you're running this content in the first place. That's not the only news we have for the Mythic Plus system in patch 9.1 though. We've also seen our first hints of the new seasonal affix coming with Season 2 of Shadowlands. This obviously isn't final yet and we can't test it in game sadly. The dev team are dragging their feet on releasing the Season 2 affix on the PTR by the looks of things, but we do have some very interesting data mining which could be related to the new affix. You may remember in previous PTR builds that anima powers and anima orbs were referenced in the game files when talking about the new Season 2 affix, and a lot of players thought that might be a mistake, despite there being a good precedent for anima powers being active in other types of content for this patch. The raid already lets us use some crazy powerful anima powers for one of the bosses, so why not copy over some of the flavor of that system for the Mythic Plus affix and just put a dungeon twist on it? Well, that's exactly what we might see. There are two new anima powers which have been data mined in patch 9.1. The first is called Volcanic Plumage. Your damaging abilities have a chance to create a gout of flame beneath the target that erupts after 2.5 seconds, dealing fire damage to all enemies within 3 yards and knocking them upward. That's literally the volcanic affix, except you get to turn it on your enemies. You finally get to sit there and laugh as monsters are blasted into the sky because they can't dodge volcanic, which might make you feel a bit better about those times where you couldn't dodge volcanic either. The other power is Athame of Necrotic Wounding. Your harmful spells and abilities consume the target with creeping decay, inflicting physical damage every 2 seconds and reducing healing and absorption received by 2% for 8 seconds, stacking up to 10 times. Again, it's literally just the necrotic affix, but you're the one with the power instead of the dungeon monsters. Now, we have no idea if these powers become available only during weeks where those dungeon affixes are active. It could be interesting to change things up as the affixes themselves change, or we could just be given a choice of various powers to pick from, exactly like anima powers in Torghast. These two powers are the only ones that have been data mined thus far, and while they could just be added into Torghast, I guess, I think it's a bit too much of a coincidence that these powers are Mythic plus affixes, but for the players. This could end up being an incredibly fun seasonal affix to play around with. Can you imagine being given a storming power, or bolstering power, or an inspiring power? You might be able to damage enemies with quaking, or explosive orbs, or turn sanguine pools or spiteful spirits to your advantage. I think there's a lot of potential here, but we need to be able to see it in action, how it's actually going to work, and get some real testing time in on the PTR before the affix goes live. Hopefully the PTR is updated with a lot more information about this affix sometime soon, and when that happens, I'll be sure to collect as much info as I can to pass on to you wonderful folks. In other news, the latest patch 9.1 build introduced something a lot of players, especially players who play a lot of characters, have been asking for quite a while now: storyline skips. If you remember, in a previous video, a skip was introduced to let you bypass the Torghast storyline from Bolvar, including the Twisting Corridor section where you discover the fate of Anduin. After you've done that on one character, you can skip it all on other characters in patch 9.1. Well, a similar skip was just introduced for the new patch 9.1 storyline. That's a bit strange. Usually these story skips are introduced in future patches to help get you caught up to current content, but this time around it's going to help you kickstart any of your alt adventures. The Korthia intro is fairly straightforward. The jailer is attacking places, so you go defend it. Then we want to take the fight to the jailer, so you hop down to the moor, have a chat with Venari, find out that a whole new zone was just yoinked down into the moor, do a bit of exploring, ultimately find Korthia and the little base there, and link everything up so your covenants can storm the moor and give you a helping hand. Then you learn how to use mounts in the moor, and you take the fight to the eye of the jailer and ultimately remove its influence from the zone, so you can go about your moor dailies without having to worry about being picked up and carted off by one of the abductors. After that, you start the real Korthia storyline, but this new story skip allows you to completely skip over all of that introduction sequence, so you can jump straight to the real Korthia storyline for your ult. Seeing this kind of skip introduced in the patch where the story content is still relevant is very interesting, but honestly I am so happy right now. I love working through the story sections of the game for the first time, but I don't really see the point in doing it more than once, especially when the vast majority of a patch's content happens after the initial story section. In patch 9.1, being able to skip to the Korthia base, being all set up and ready to go, means you skip the discovery of Korthia, learning how to use mounts in the moor, and the removal of the eye of the jailer. So your ults will have all of that done and dusted, ready to go, and you can start working on the new reputations, the Korthia storylines, collecting currencies, upgrading Korthia gear, you know, the actual content and meat of the patch, and then you can even maybe go back and start doing Venari's dailies to get caught up with her reputation in the moor without worrying about the influence of the Eye of the Jailer. Now, of course, this skip is a choice, so if you really want to work through the introduction story again, you can do that too. It's completely up to you. Now, if only the dev team would introduce a skip for the moor introduction sequence at the very start of the Shadowlands, that would be great. And then to round out this video, we have some disappointing news, but at the same time it's also not really that surprising. BlizzCon 2021 will not be happening, so that's 2 years in a row that BlizzCon will be skipping, but with the current state of the world being quite shaky and uncertain, having a massive in-person convention probably isn't the best idea. Apparently at this point in the year it's also too late to really start preparing for a BlizzCon 2021 because it's such a massive production, but that doesn't mean we won't be hearing from Blizzard at all in the near future. In the blue post announcing the lack of BlizzCon, they also said, "We don't want to let too long go by before we connect with everyone again, so in the meantime we're planning a global event for the early part of next year, combining an online show along the lines of our recent BlizzCon line with smaller in-person gatherings, and we'll share more as our plans come together." So we will probably see a very similar event as to what we saw in early 2020, but combined with some smaller in-person stuff at the same time. I guess that could be like organized watch parties, or maybe the dev team will round up a few community figures and have something special planned. We're just gonna have to wait and see, I guess. But that means the next time BlizzCon could return to being a massive in-person event will be the year 2021. That seems so far away, but maybe that will be the first time we get to visit BlizzCon in person. Hopefully the devs have some exciting progress to share with us at next year's BlizzCon line, relating to World of Warcraft obviously, but also all of their other games and worlds that are in production. There are apparently still lots of projects that we haven't even heard about yet, so that's super exciting as well. But that's the roundup of this week's news, and that's it for this video. What do you think of the changes to the Mythic plus Keystone achievements? Do you think a score-based system having more flexibility will be better, or would you rather it go back to how it used to be and only require 1 plus 15 key regardless of affixes? How do you feel about story skips, and do you think the dev team should add more of them, or maybe not add them at all? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to everyone who subscribed on Twitch. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching, folks. Good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.